Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to another episode of the Community Live Stream here on YouTube and Twitch. Get to that in just a minute. My name is Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow. I am a TPMM with ServiceNow. Been here for about 8 years in various roles, customer for a couple years before that. This is the show that brings you not only the community, the questions that come up, but the explanation, the understanding, the in-depth investigation. Wow, it sounds pretty dramatic, doesn't it? Just little old me. This is, I will bring you information and try to explain what's going on along the way. If you've seen it before, that's great. Maybe there's a refresher in here for you. If you are new to the platform or have never seen any of this content before, find something helpful, check that like button on YouTube or Twitch, and other people will know that this is helpful information as well. This is Tuesday, July 3rd, 2018, and I am happy to declare this is episode 100 of this show. Started last fall, and I think we need something to celebrate that.
On this auspicious occasion, let the horn of eternity cut a thunderous blast!
And that's about how it goes. There have been fits, there have been starts, there have been crazy things that go on, but there has always been a wonderful community, and I thank you for joining me. Let's get started with the preliminaries. We do this show every weekday on YouTube. If you want to subscribe to the channel, get a notification. Well, mine hasn't come in yet, but it will. If you're subscribed to the channel, you get a notification when the stream starts, when the post is live, and other great content, such as what I've been uploading in the last few days. Lots and lots of videos, recordings from CreatorCon, a lot of the breakout sessions. I've got about 40 videos up there and about another 10 or so to go. And I will get those over the next couple of days. Yes, it's a holiday, but hey, what a great time to work on videos, right? There's just sit on the couch, watch Netflix, and render videos all day. Good morning, Vijaya. Good to see you. Sorry, your name was a little bit obscured by the camera, but we'll get there. Good to see you if you're watching live. Thank you. We also do this on Twitch, over at twitch.tv/NOWCommunity. Encourage you. Both of them are available. I don't have any preference one way or another. Looks like we'll have a friendly competition at some point where do we have more YouTube viewers or more Twitch viewers? That's up to you. I appreciate it either way. If you want to say good morning like Vijaya Aditya did, put your name in the chat. Say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Let me know where you're from. I'd love to find that out. It's just very interesting. I can mentally put pins on the map of India, or I'm sure Steve from Sweden will show up soon. Just a forewarning that I will not be doing a show tomorrow or Thursday. Those are two ServiceNow holidays in observance of the U.S. Independence Day. And with any luck, I'll be back on Friday. So hope to see you there. But this is the beginning of this show. Let us continue where we're going. If you do have something more involved than just a good morning, your location, the weather report, maybe a contribution to the discussion of where we can go and how we can go, I run into problems, I run into questions, I'll throw it back at you and say, hey, community, hey, chat, live chat, what do you think? And we'll see where it goes from there. But if you've got something more involved, a question or an issue of your own, or you've asked one, put it in the community at community.servicenow.com. That's what's right behind me. That's where we'll be digging around. I can't guarantee that I will have time to look at it. Maybe less likely that I'll have an answer for it, but I want you to understand what goes into the thought process of how do we help people? How do we get things moving? Where can we steer people? Clarify the question. And again, these are things that you can use in your job every day as an admin, as a developer, as an architect, and understand what's being asked. Some of these questions that we'll see today may have very terse discussions. How do I do X? Well, help me understand why you want to do X. What is the business requirement for X? What have you tried? Are you getting any errors? All that kind of stuff. Good discussions to have and good for you to keep in your toolbox, along with perhaps scripting APIs or a feature that I'll show you a little bit later. I will be following up on some questions that were in the past. I'll give you a background of those. So in all, I think we're probably going to get 6, maybe 8 questions total. It really depends on how deep I go. There have been days where I think I covered 1 or 2 topics, but that's all right. This is a free form, totally unscripted session, and we will get into it in just a minute. I also want to remind you that over at developer.servicenow.com, you can pick up a free personal developer instance, use all those features of ServiceNow, test things out, prototype, show your boss proof of concept before it gets into your environment. You can create entire applications on these personal developer instances. You can enable plugins, extensions, orchestration, things that are generally that are often a pay-for service. You can try them out for free over at developer.servicenow.com. Just sign up, claim an instance. You can get any of the latest 3 releases as of this recording. That would be Istanbul, Jakarta, and Kingston. Our releases are all named alphabetically after cities of the world. I don't know what I almost said, sisters of the world. I think I have sisters all over the world. Yeah. And where was I going with that? Developer.servicenow.com. We also have all the scripting APIs, free learning plans if you want to get started learning about scripting and building applications and best practices around that. We've got free learning plans there as well. There's also information about meetups that you can find. In fact, why don't I show you? There are some of them that are going on. There's one in Paris tomorrow. How about that? Minneapolis next week. If you don't see it there, I also encourage you to go over to, let's put the title away and bring up the meetup page. We've also got meetups over at meetup.com is where they're organized. If you are interested in starting a chapter, if there isn't one in your area, obviously this is not a comprehensive list. If you go to that link on the bottom, you will see the entire map of where things are. I think there's 40 or more chapters now. Some of them are looking for leadership. New York, Chicago, the Bay Area, in the San Francisco area could use somebody to step up. There's already a ready-made audience. It's your group to control. We're not telling you how to run this thing. We will support you. We will help you, but we're not going to tell you what needs to be done. This is a developer meetup for developers. Very open, friendly environment. There are some groups that meet on a monthly basis, some that meet on a quarterly basis, some somewhere in between. Some that talk about coding concepts, some that have a routine social. Maybe once a year they just say, hey, let's go to the pub or the bar or the microbrew and sit down and get to know each other and talk shop and figure out what we want to discuss for the next year. So that's often a great way. Sometimes it's more of a live coding happy hour format where somebody gets up and says, I have a problem I want to solve. Who wants to help me work on this? And we all roll up our sleeves and get into it. It's a great time. I encourage you to get involved with the developer meetups. Again, if there's not one in your area, reach out. We can help you. There's a link right there on there's a link on the page that's linked on the bottom of this page. How's that? Good morning, everybody. Wow, the people are rolling in now. Jalan, Rahul, Raghavendar, sorry. I hope I'm saying these names right. It's still early for me. It is about 6 a.m. I do this every weekday at 1 p.m. UTC. Crazy thing is, I do it just for fun. And that's why I like it. Also, other events that you might be interested in. Let's get the event page up there. That you might be interested in. Tomorrow, there's a government community event in New South Wales. There's you know what? I am going to do a quick refresh on this. Good morning, Krishna. My YouTube screen is very low bandwidth and I look like blurry. Well, it's still blurry. We'll see if that clears up in a little bit. There we go. All right. Just clearing up the technical things, doing an audio check, make sure that's working. Great. We want to make sure that we hear this frequently whenever I contribute to the community. I try to remember to do that. It's just a little Pavlovian reward system for me. Other events you can find are at the link on the bottom of the page, and I encourage you, hey, follow me on LinkedIn. I've got lots of announcements, whether it's about digital transformation, AI, events that are coming up. You can find them all there. We have one that I like to promote in particular, and that's our Tech Now series that I've been doing for about 5.5 years with various hosts. We are adding a new host next week. We're going to see how this works. This is a trial run, and you will get to meet somebody new from the ServiceNow staff. Dave Slusher has decided to step back from doing this on a regular basis. We thank him. We will miss him. We will still see him on Live Coding Happy Hour. Don't know yet whether or not there's a show this Friday. I will try and find that out. He's had some personal matters to deal with that we have not been able to present Live Coding Happy Hour for the last few weeks. But hopefully we're over that hump and we can get him back on the air. I've got an idea that I'd like to work on. Don't know if he'll take it or not, but we'll see how that goes. But Tech Now, getting back to Tech Now, yes, it's still there on the screen. Episode 54 will be all about the script debugger. If you haven't used that, I encourage you to try it. I've been so tempted to show you more of it on this forum, but I don't want to blow the content that I've got lined up. It's we also have a quick tip that you may or may not have known about, may have thought about. This is the quick tips at the beginning of the show are inspired by discussions that I get from here, from the community, from this live stream, and people say, "Hey, have you done that?" And I will jot it down and go, "Ooh, that's a really good thing," and I put it in the queue, and it might come up in a week, it might come up in a year, but it is captured, and I love sharing those things. They're things that you remind me that I sometimes take for granted. This particular checkbox, or you can right-click here. And I went, you know what? I never realized that there are some people that don't know this, so I offer it in a quick tip in that same format. Anyway, enough about Tech Now. Register at the link below, the bit.ly link /TN54Reg, and appreciate it very much. You'll get a reminder, 8 a.m. Pacific time, whatever that is in your part of the world. I think that makes it 4 p.m. UTC. You're going to have to do the math because Pacific is 8 hours behind right now, I think. Anyway, I'm trying to remember 7 hours. Yeah, 7 hours. So it'd be 3 p.m. UTC. I don't change time zones anymore. I don't have to think about this, but I have to remember everybody else who does. So if I can keep mine and UTC in sync, which are always going to be 7 hours apart, then you can do the rest. All right, let's get into the community because I have been blathering on. Can we create guided tour for self-service portal? The answer is yes in London. That is coming up. That's our part of our August content. On August 14th, Tech Now 55 will be covering all the London features for the platform. I'm not going to be talking about CSM. I'm not going to be talking about ITSM. I'm not going to be talking about ITOM. This will be just the platform features because that's who we're talking to for Tech Now. We're going to be covering talking to developers and admins, much like this content. That's sort of where I like to talk to my friends who are in that same role, and we'll be covering that. And I can say without hesitation that Guided Tour Designer will now support Service Portal. Now, if you're talking about CSM, that's a different question. I don't believe CMS. Careful distinction there. CSM is Customer Service Management. That's an application. CMS is the old style portal where you're doing dynamic blocks and jelly programming. Service Portal is AngularJS and Bootstrap, that sort of thing. So good news is, yes, we'll be getting there. Woohoo! Let's begin. I saw something here that intrigued me, and I want to see if it's still there. If it's still open, resolve button on custom table that works like incident resolve button. I suspect somebody's already jumped on this one since I was talking for the last 15 minutes. And they're trying to set up a resolve button. Yep, we've already got a solution and accepted. You can write ACL for which, okay, the question said, I've created a custom table and one of the fields, state, which they called u_state, if they've created a custom application, why not make it scoped? Missed opportunity there. Then you would have a field called state. Or you could extend the task table. I wanted to create a UI action for resolved so I can make state read-only as there is a special user who has write access to these records. How can I go about getting it to work like the resolve on the incident, which makes sure the UI policies are followed? Below is the code I wrote for the UI action, from the UI action on incident, but not sure how the GSFT submit part works. If I remember right, GSFT is a legacy thing, and you can do gform.submit is another way. But I'm not going to go there right now. Because you've got this get form element, you get the UI action. This part actually calls the server code. So this is a combined client-side function and server-side code. There's a tricky way you can do that. I don't use these all that often. I don't find them all that helpful. If I'm going to be setting values, then why not set them in the server side and just make it simple and keep it? When given a choice, here's your tip number 1 of the day. When given a choice between client-side and server-side, and both do the same functionality, I'm setting a field, take the server-side code. It's easier to debug, it's easier to write, it's easier to maintain, it's easier to test. So that's my solution. So you can write an ACL, it changes the fields. I think was that the only answer? Yeah, I'm just going to put in my quick tip. Quick recommendation from me. If you're going to write a custom application, consider writing it as a scoped app for easier testing and maintenance later. There are a lot of advantages. To doing it that way. And let's give them, not that page, docs. Let's go to the docs and scoped apps. Documentation is available over at docs.servicenow.com. Did I or did I not? Activate configuration management? No. This is a lot of search results for scoped apps. Can I just get one at the top? Scoped application. Business rules, GlideCommunity, application scope. Well, it helps if you type in the right thing. Parts of an application. Application scoping protects applications by identifying. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on this show. Docs, application scope. If you're not familiar with scoped applications, which I don't think a lot of people are, and they don't cover it in the sysadmin course, or what are they calling it now, system fundamentals, application scoping protects applications from other applications. Traditionally, if you were writing an application, it would be in the global scope. And I will show you an example of a global application. It's called Incident. Incident, problem, change. A lot of the legacy ITSM applications are in this global scope. What does that mean? It means if I go to configure, say, table, that any other application, if you look up here, there's a field called application. Any other application in the global scope has complete rights to read, write, delete, and update records in this table. It is effectively not protected. You say, Chuck, what about ACLs? That's letting users access the data. This is an application to application thing. So if I have an application called Community Livestream, and it's in the global scope, and I write a business rule that says, hey, anytime I get a community live stream record, I want to delete all incidents. Maybe I miswrote the business rule. Okay, that's an accident. Somebody creates a new CLS record, and it deletes all the incidents. And people go, what happened? Don't we have any security against that? The business rule is going to run, as the system. Unless, of course, you take my tip from last week and use Glad Record Secure, which most people don't, but that's okay. We'll get into that another time. There's this application access tab, and it says all application scopes. Well, even if I set this to this application scope is global. So any other application that is in the global scope, you're sort of unprotected. Everybody's got access to your application. So it's perfectly possible for another application's script, whether it's a UI action, a business rule, a workflow, to impact your data on your table unintentionally. or maybe intentionally. You go, well, that's crazy. Scoping protects that. It means you have to give explicit access to allow that. Case in point, I was doing an import and I needed to effect changes on another table. I have two scoped applications. This one's importing data, and this one is getting artifacts from that. So when I say, let's import a new record into my scope A, and every time you do that, go over to scope B and do something to those records. Well, initially, as I was importing, it says, you can't do that because these two don't have permission to talk to each other. The default is to read. You can see it right here. Default access is to allow read access, which may or may not be fine. You may want to say, this is a completely protected application. Do not let any other applications read information from this table. That would be bad. You can also set up this application access between scripts. So if I've got a script include, which is a library of functions, I can grant access to who has access to run my functions. And if you're not in my scope, you don't have access to even look at them or touch them or run them. That's up to you how you want to set that up. So scoping application protects applications from other applications. How to create custom patterns. Please share a link or webinar which guides me. You're going to have to clarify what you mean by custom patterns. Are you talking about a custom application? So that's my mini tutorial on scoping. If I were to create a new application, I would do it through Studio, which is available under System Applications Studio, but I make a favorite. It's the first favorite I make on any instance. I did that last week when I showed you, hey, I got started. There are no applications on here. I go to Create Application. You've got a couple of choices. My favorite is Create Custom Application. There are subtle differences between the first choice and the second choice. I won't get into them here, but I recommend take the second choice. And if I call this Community Livestream, this would be my dummy program. This is the scope. It gives a scope name. It's analogous to a namespace. So I can use that. It's used as a prefix to protect my scripts, my properties, my tables, my fields from interfering with others. It's effectively a longer version of u underscore something. Nice thing is now my fields don't have u underscore on them on a table. At this point, I can optionally create a table, which I will call demo. Terrible name, but notice that if I had another application, maybe I call the other one Chuck, it would be x underscore 66238 underscore Chuck. And I had a demo table on there, it could still be called demo. The label would be demo, but it would be Chuck demo instead of CLS demo. So again, separation of that. You don't have that conflict. I could have two properties on two different applications with the same name, perceivably. Maybe one's called active. Well, one is x underscore 66238 under CLS dot active, and the other is underscore Chuck dot active. So I could separate lots of things this way. Demo extends table. No, I don't think we need to extend anything at this point. But just for fun, let's give it an auto number. We'll leave it as DEM, so I can create a table at the same time. Very easy to do. And with a few clicks, what I just did would have taken me about 10 manual steps to set up with possible human errors in there. Did I remember to do the numbering? Did I set up a sysnumbered maintenance table? Like, ugh. Go back to the list. It created some ACLs. I picked my application. It set up a menu. I've gotten pretty far with just this table, and I haven't created any fields in here. Although, if you look closely, there are 6 columns by default. 7 because I checked number. I've got the date the records are created, who updated them, that sort of thing. So those are available to all tables. I still really don't have much more than a number on this table. I'm not going to develop that out any further, but now I've got a scope table. You can see the name of this table, anytime I address that, has a unique identifier. It's not just called u underscore demo. Nice thing about this is if I want to share this either with another customer or another instance or whatever, it's not going to conflict with anything they give them. The reason we came out for scoping is so that we could set up the store. And the store would people buying things or downloading them from the store would have complete confidence that it's not going to impact anything they've already done if it's properly done. Now, store certifications are certified. They go through a very rigorous certification process so that people understand, have you got, where was I going with this? Is it going to conflict with anything I've got? Properties or scripts or business rules? The answer has to be no. You cannot say, I'm going to modify and include this global business rule that came out of the box so that it works with my application. Doesn't work that way. You have to have your own business rules for your own applications. Seems obvious when you say it, but it's a little harder in practice. So I recommend doing scoped applications. Whenever I build new applications, that's where I start. There's very few instances where I say, because of the architecture, because of what it's interacting with, I have to go with global. Rarely happens. But then again, I'm not writing massive enterprise applications such as you are. All right, let's shut that down, go back, see what's new. 100 shows. This is what you get. It all goes like this. It's just a stream of consciousness triggered by these discussions that are going on here. Is there a way to know if a specific group is used in a workflow? How does that go? We are planning on removing some groups from the instance. However, we would like to know if there is a query to know if a specific group is being used by a workflow. There are several workflows, and doing this manually could take much time. You know what? There is a table called WF activity, but I think that lists, let's leave that. I didn't want to change anything there. I don't think that's the instances of the activity. I think that's the dictionary of activities. And, well, maybe not. Approval requested run script, approval requested action, workflow version. No, this is on the versions. Okay, so if I said approval, activity definition is approval action. Let's go in here to approval requested. It's really weird sometimes looking at these activities without, when they're not on the workflow canvas. I'll run always if true. Let me find something else. Tell you what, let's go to the workflow editor first. Workflow editor, which is under workflow editor. And up comes the workflow editor. Nicely redesigned as of Istanbul, I think. We've got which ones are checked out? None, because I haven't used any on this instance since I cleaned it up. The help, relative to what I've got installed. If I turn on the plugin for orchestration, I'll get a few more chiclets here on the help button, on the help page. So let's go to published and we'll check out one that I know has an approval. Do I know which one has an approval? Emergency change request. That sounds like it should have an approval. Let's take a look. Set value, run script, approval action, approval group. There we go. So approval group on change request emergency. If I go back to activities and I say, name starts with change request emergency, there's my approval action. The activity definition is where they're actually defined. Is there any information in here? Nope, don't need the conditions. Is there any information in there as to who has that approval? Let's go back to the editor. I'm seeing if I can tear this apart. This is a little detective work. And the properties on that are groups cab approval. So they're looking for somewhere in here, how do I tease out this information from that right there via data? If you could do a search, you could find it. Anybody ever done anything like this before? So I've got workflow condition is always. That means it's going to run all the time. It's only got one input. I'm seeing if there's anything in here. Move to scheduled. Nope. Just poking around the data, seeing what I can find. Workflow transitions, say, check if change is on hold. That's where it comes from. This is where it goes to. Move to scheduled. We can probably verify that just by looking at it. Approval action, notification, check if it's on hold. I don't see move to scheduled, but that's okay. I'm not reading it right. There's nothing to expand or collapse here. No. So where does it keep all that other data, the other metadata about this particular activity? A workflow element is a server-side script that runs blah, 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 blah. Okay, I don't see it in there. The other idea is, let's go to tables. Tables and columns under system definition. And in here, I'm going to make that a little smaller. It's affecting the rendering. I'm going to have a series of tables that says workflow something. I could also tear into the script include and see what I can find there, but I'm not going to do that yet. Web logic, widget, workflow. Workflow activity definition, workflow activity, workflow actions. Let's see what's in WF action real quick. Class, condition created, display name, icon, order. I'm looking for something that might tell me about the fields or the variables. The context is the running version of that workflow. So if there was an emergency change going on, it would instantiate a workflow version, which is kind of like the blueprint, and create a workflow context. That way, if you change the version, all the contexts that are running remain unaffected. You don't want to start changing your workflow halfway through a midstream. If you've got something that takes 37 steps to progress and it's on step 36 and you change your original version, you don't want all of the ones that are in process to be affected. That would be bad. People say, well, what if you want to change them? So, what are you going to do about that? I mean, approvals have already been approved. You don't want to ask people to reapprove. And how do you know where to connect up what was with what is? So the best process is let the old ones run their course. It's a bit like when the cable company changes your rates, or in the recent case of Amazon increasing the cost of Amazon Prime from $99 to, what was it, $109 or $119? They just raised their price in mid-May. I renewed at the end of April, so I'm good with the old pricing. Can you imagine if they said, hey, guess what? We're changing the price in mid-May. Pay us another $20 or you don't get Amazon Prime. Their workflow changed, their process changed, but I'm grandfathered in until the conclusion of my contract. That's the way that workflows go as well. All right. Oh, I'm going down some crazy rabbit holes today. Let's look. What did I say? The workflow action table. I have no idea what's in there. You can do WF action, WF_action.list at the top, show subflow. No, I don't think that's what I'm going to do. All right. My detective work is not panning out here today. It is just, I think the below link will help you. Somebody typed something in while I was doing my research. Let's explore that. When you're on the web and you post a link, the courteous thing to do is embed the link so people can click it and not copy and paste it. So there's a way we can check the assignment group being used in a workflow or not. I have 3 assignment groups. This was posted 9 months ago. You can search for yourself by typing the following: sys variable value list, then press, then add the filter, table is WF activity. Hey, that's pretty cool. That's kind of what I was looking for. Sys variable value. So let's go back here. Sys variable value. I knew there was a relationship between the things on the form. Okay, and there's a user approval. Very nice. There's 2,417 of these. The next step they say is, oops, that's not the thread I was looking at. This is. Table is WF activity. Variable.column name contains fulfillment. They were looking for a slightly different thing, right, to look for that. So, yep, that's going to help. I found that helpful. I'm going to mark it helpful. Give that person some credit. Thank you. And on to the next one. We learned something today. Sys variable value. I've got a few things in the inbox. We'll get to those in just a little bit. explore a little more new exploration here. getFields not working on a glide record in scoped application. This came up just before the show. In fact, that'll probably decrement my inbox counter by 1. getFields is a method on glide record that will tell you what fields are available on that table. So if I were to, let's do this live, script background, say var inc gr equals new glide record, make that a little bigger so you can see it. Glide record incident, and then I said var fields equals inc gr dot get fields. Try this, gs info fields. See what happens. Run that, but that's global, so I want to run that globally. Change my scope there, and it says a big array of nothing. I may have to do J2 JS. Is that what it was? I'm trying to remember. There's a, nope, nothing. There is an example. I'm doing this wrong. Let's go to here and say get fields. Might have to for loop this thing. It returns a JavaScript array. Method getFields returns a Java array, not a JavaScript, it returns a Java array. And often what I find is if it involves Java, it's not available in scoped apps. That's just a general rule of thumb. I don't know where it's not published anywhere. So here's fields equals gr inc getFields. And then they do a for I equals 0 field size, glide element equals fields get I, so you can get this information, yada, yada, yada. getFields, very useful, but it's available in legacy. It's not available in scoped. So that was the discussion we were having. Let's show all the replies. And a few hours ago, I had said a little while ago, that is correct. It's not available. Help me understand what you're trying to do. What is the purpose? Context is king. I think that's the name of a Star Trek Discovery episode. But what is it you're trying to do? Again, questions you should ask in your daily job when someone says, how do you do this? Or why isn't this working? Understand the background. They may be taking, you may have a different approach that works if they're running into problems. In the above scenario, I have to query glide record to get the fields on the records in it. Why? What are we trying to do? Now, you didn't answer my question. Okay. Config gr, u configuration, fields are empty, config array, wants to do a get fields. Why do you want the fields? Okay. Config array.push, config object, then if they do a try catch, good for you. Okay. Sorry if I wasn't clear. What is the business requirement behind this script? What are you trying to do? I wasn't looking for the technical reason for doing this. Sometimes if you understand what they're trying to do, say, hey, I'm going to this list. I want to get the information. Like, you know, there's another way you can do this. And it may not be what they expected. So that is what I'm after there. Let's do a quick screen refresh. Saw one that said script include issue that caught my eye. Let's see if we can help out with that. I've got 5 things in the inbox. You know what? I'm going to go after them. We've got discussions that we started that need to keep going. So getFields not working, we just answered that one. Or just responded, excuse me, didn't answer it. Get reference table data based on reference application name. This is an interesting one. They've got, I don't know if you can see it here. Let me bring that out to its own page. What you can do with that nice little link that we discovered shortly after we migrated. They've got a form called CMDB servers, and they set this application, I tried to highlight it, it was an image. They set the application name and they want a script to go out and populate the server owner. Ah, it is a reference field. I know what's going on. I know what's going on. It's not. And I had said, hey, you know what? Where's my reply? Let's do show all replies in here. Show all replies. Mine's in here somewhere. We're having a discussion that's going on. It's getting a little long. I apologize for the scrolling. But somebody said, hey, here's the script you tried. And I noticed in this one that, actually not that one. It was a little further down. He said, here's the script I tried. And the onChange script starts here on line 1 and ends on line 4. And then they're doing a get reference to get the record of that information. I went, no, you kind of missed it. This is never being called. Line 5 is not going to be called because the function is done. I said, you want to move that. I said, put that back in there. He said, well, that worked great, but now I've got a sysid. And I said, well, that's because you're putting a sysid, which is a reference to a record, into a string field. That's not going to help. I said, did you try? You might want to think about changing that to a reference field so that everything's nice and connected. You save the sysid and it points to the person. Says, they can actually come back with this a half hour ago. Wow. uServer owner is referring to uApplication specialist within the CMDB application. That's where the table is. I have changed uServer owner type reference string, and now I am not getting a sysid either. So what's working and what's not? It's referring to uApplication specialist within CMDB applications table. I'm not wrapping my head around the whole data model. Not sure why you have changed to string type. Just remember to suggest that it should be a reference field. Bringing back the displayed value. So 8 minutes ago, this was responded. I'm not clear of what's working and what's not, and I'm still might be missing some details on the data model. What table has what field? In short, what is working and what is not at this point? It sounds like you are getting your reference field is working, correct? It is getting populated by the client script. I also want to point out there's a bad practice going on here, and I don't want to get too nitpicky. This person is already struggling. But you'll notice in the script they're doing a get reference call and then doing a set value. Now it's being done on a reference field. This has two problems. One, get reference is getting the entire record when you only need one value. You want the app name application specialist. You want one value, one field value from that entire record. I don't know if this record is 200 bytes of information, which would be pretty small when you think about a sysid takes 32, or if it's 80K. Why retrieve all of that information when you only need that 32 bytes? Get reference is not the most efficient way of doing it. They are, fortunately, using a callback function called setOwner, which is good. They're doing this asynchronously, which is required in scoped apps, but I don't think they necessarily need to do it here. So they're following one best practice, and that's to do this client script asynchronously, meaning you're not holding the user hostage. You don't freeze the browser while you're off doing your server operation. The other bad thing is they're doing a set value. I can't highlight this. Sorry, bad habit. They're doing a set value. I'm going to make that a little bigger so you can see it. gform.setValue on a reference field now and passing it the sysid. What do you see when you look at reference fields? I've got one up here in the screenshot up above that says application. You see a display value. Well, if your client script says, go get me the sysid of this user, put it in this field, it turns around and says, well, what do you want me to display? Because people don't like looking at sysids, so it has to make another return trip to the server to get the display value for that sysid. It goes, oh, this field is a reference field. It points to this table. You gave me a sysid. I'm going to go get the display value. You're actually doing two server calls in that case. There is a third parameter to set value for setting the display value. You say, here's the field, here's the sysid, here's the display value. That's when I turn and say, it's time for a GlideAjax call. It's time to take control and do this myself. Don't rely on getReference. It's inefficient. It returns too much information. I'm going to shorten this discussion and say, go watch episode 33 of Tech Now. You can find Tech Now on the community. Oh, let me find that. I don't want to beat this person up too much because they're all, like I said, they're already struggling with this script. But if you do it right, Tech Now episode list. I know it sounds like a broken record. I'm not trying to advertise my own work. What I am trying to do is encourage people to reference what's already out there and learn from it, because that's an important thing. So episode 33, that's covered a little bit in 5 and 6, client-side scripting fundamentals and script includes. But 33 gets into more of a whole scenario of how do you call it? What do you do? Where's it from? We covered this, wow, seems like a lot longer ago than that, but we're making good progress. How can you pass complex information? Rather than just one sys or one string, you can pass back an array of objects if you want, and those objects contain exactly what you want. If you want them to contain a sys and display value for 5 users, you can do that, and you can populate the whole list field if you want, doing that. So that's, think about watching that and use GlideAjax for your client scripts that need to go ask the server for information, even if it's not a reference field. If it's just a simple, hey, go get me a sys, why go get the whole record with getReference? I'm belaboring the point at this part anyway, but let's move on. What else do we have? Dynamic filtering for business service categories. This feels like a really old thread. I don't recognize the title. 2 years ago, which means somebody put something new in here, we're referencing the wiki, which means it's really old. Actually, I think people were referencing the wiki up until the wiki disappeared in December. 13 minutes ago. Hi all, I've created a catalog item and there are fields as caller ID and business service both as reference fields. I would like to show all business services which are related to the caller's company. I've written the below unload and script include, but it's still returning. Okay. Hey, look, an example of GlideAjax. What did I tell you? It's a great time. So this is the name of the script include that you want to call. This is the name of the function. Sysparm name tells me it's going to be calling the getCompany function, and user is passing an additional parameter that they want to use. So they do a getXML asynchronously. Thank you very much. When they get there, they parse out the answer and split on result. Okay, if it's not empty, then let's split on a comma. I don't like commas because they can slip into the data. If your display value, for example, is Tomasi, comma, Chuck, that comma is going to screw you up if you're looking for multiple users separated by commas. They say, well, let's use the pipe symbol. Stop. Stop right there. Just pass a JSON payload, encode it on the server, decode it on the client. They're perfectly compatible. You get exactly what you want. You don't have to worry about any of this debilitating delimiter stuff. Okay, so the name of the function I said is getCompany. Name of the script include is populate BS. Love that. And the user ID is sysparm user. So they log that out. Are you seeing any log messages? There's my first question. Then they go and get the user by user ID. There's a faster way to do that, but I'm not going to get into it. If they get the record, then they get the company, which is the sys, print that out. Then they go into the client service, add the query where the company is COMP that came from up here. I would encourage using getValue at this point instead of getting an entire object. They do active is true. They want all the active. They push this into an array. They join it with a comma. Life is happy. Even in the script include, it also prints the correct business services. I'm thinking I'm making a mistake in the client script while displaying it back. It's funny, I just talked about this. I strongly recommend avoiding comma or other text delimited fields in this case. Wait a minute. There's a reference field and they want to pass back an array? Okay. Something's fishy with this. I'll get to that in a second. Watch Tech Now. Funny, I just mentioned that. Episode 33 to see how to pass in complex information like an array using JSON. You can encode on the server and decode on the client without worrying if your payload includes your delimiter character. Second tip, use getValue more in your server side script include. Example, var comp equals user dot getValue company. It will prevent a multitude of issues later on. In this case, it's just a safeguard. Tip number 3. You mentioned here. No, that's not a tip. Question. You mentioned that user and business service are reference fields. You are passing back an array of business services. So you're trying to get the sysids? He is. He's getting bs.ubusinessservice.toString. This is also recommended over toString. Make sure you pass not only the sysid, funny how these two threads tie together, but the display value. And use here. What is the data type on both our reference fields? How are you getting an array into a reference field? How are you planning to get an array into a reference field? That almost sounds more like a reference qualifier, that he wants to pull down the magnifying glass to only show the relevant reference fields. But I think what he's trying to do is send back an array and say, hey, use these. That's not going to work. Let's find out what he's really trying to do. How to use scripted filters to pass query string value. Wow, I haven't heard about scripted filters in a long time. But somebody's added to this thread that was started a couple of years ago. Let's see what the new reply is. It should be highlighted in blue. Should be. There it is. Hi all, I've created a catalog item. There are fields. Oh, same thing. Did you just reply? Did I click the same thing twice? Okay, yeah. Community tip. If you're going to ask for help, please only ask once. It makes it difficult to respond and for others to follow the discussion. Please see my response in the other thread. Okay? Note to you, that goes for any community, not just this one, obviously. If I were to ask for help in HR and CSM and ITSM and developer community, how do the helpers know which one to go answer? How does somebody later come along and find the right answer if the same thing was asked 4 times? And how do I keep up on that? I mean, it seems beneficial at the first, from my perspective. Hey, I'm asking as broad an audience as possible. Not the best approach. You want to ask the most specific audience. That's where the subject matter experts lie. If I'm asking a question about HR, I don't put it in performance analytics. Unless it's a reporting question, then put it in performance analytics. Even though it's related to my HR application, you will get the subject matter experts that can help resolve that problem. So let's get rid of that. That was that one, right? Let's go to the next one. Why didn't that one uncheck? Something up with my inbox? Let's find out. I've got 5 minutes left, and I don't want to mess around with this. So that was Manish. Uncheck that. Resolve button on custom table. This is where I recommended they might want to look at. We have an inbox issue. I'm just going to reload the whole page and get back to that reply. And suddenly something's timed out? No? All right. Lee Taylor, where did broadcast go? Down here. That question has been answered. Asked about an hour ago. Maybe you can clarify something for me. At my previous company, we were going to build a scoped app, but we're told that would be a cost per user using it rather than a number of fulfiller type of user. But at the company I'm working at for now, ServiceNow partner, we were working and said there's no additional cost for creating your own app. This is why I've been avoiding using scoped apps. That's a myth. Licensing and scoping are not linked, are not connected. You can do lots of work in a scope that doesn't involve licensing. You can do, I should say, as of today, as of this writing, you can do a lot of work in global that does impact licensing. Please work with your ServiceNow account team to understand your requirements and licensing implications. I do not post specifics in here because they always change. About every 18 months, it seems like we got a new licensing policy. Okay, maybe it's 2 or 3 years. Did this response ever come up? Did it get posted or did it get stuck? Show replies about the etiquette. Oh, man. I'm not going to write it again. Hey, see my reply in the other. See my reply in the other thread. Thread. FYI, please only post once. Keep it short. Couple more. Get reference table based on reference application name. We're still on that thread. Got a couple minutes. Let's see if we can drive this one home. Have you thought about making the server owner field a reference field? That's my recommendation. But apparently there's still some discussion going on. Move the curly brace. We did that. Use server is working. Oh, I asked what's working, what's not. And apparently it's working. Got marked correct. I should read the here. Marked an answer correct. I thought there was still more going on. Check for empty field when performing transformation. Transforms. This is an interesting one that, another one that seems to be Java related. I don't know why, but they're doing a transform. So part of the import process, if you haven't watched before, is, if you're not aware of this, sorry, I was reading the comments at the same time. You take a spreadsheet or REST API or something, you put it into an import set table. That is the staging process. That's what we call an import set. It's a mirror copy of what your source data is. It could have text fields, it could have and most of it's string. It still has to be processed. Then it goes through a transform process where you take the date fields and map them to date fields. You take reference fields and you map them to reference fields. That whole transform process of field mapping and field manipulation goes on. They have an issue. They say, well, if the target field has a field called discovery source, they're obviously doing this as part of an import as discovery rather than running the discovery product. They're importing it on a spreadsheet probably from some third party. And they say, if it's not empty, then I want to set the source. I would have thought you'd do this if it is empty. If the target is nil, if it's not empty, and then they say, if it's not empty, then set it to today. So I said, as far as I know, that's a new one. As far as I know, is nil is a Java operation. It doesn't work in JavaScript. The examples I've seen are all working on things like getFields that we described earlier. And I said, thanks, Chuck. Amending to nil didn't resolve on its own, but when I looked at the line, I removed the not at the end, plus nil did the job. I was going to say that. You beat me to it. I looked at that line several times and wondered, if not field dot nil, that tells me if it is not empty, which is what you wanted, which is when you want to set the last date only. The other option would have been to keep the condition and flip the statements from the top to the bottom. So last is only being set in the top if the not nil condition is true. Anyway, glad you got it figured out. Got it figured out. That's what happens when I try to read somebody else's code before 7 a.m., which it is no longer after 7 a.m., which is why it made sense. See what they're trying to do is condition said, if the target discovery field is not empty, well, then his comment, I went, well, the comment is saying what's actually up there. So if it's not empty, it does these three. And he says, well, every time it's not empty, it's setting three fields. I only want to set those three fields if it is empty. Okay, this is just a boolean logic thing. Very easy to figure out. He figured it out before I did. Problem solved, inbox empty. I had another topic that I wanted to talk to you, but I ran out of time today. Busy schedule today. I hope you have a wonderful holiday if you're in the U.S., that you relax, celebrate. If you have 1 day off, 2 days off, whatever it is, that you have a great time. Spend it with friends and family, or just binge watch Netflix. Do what makes you happy. If you're outside the U.S., hope you have a wonderful couple of days. I will see you, God willing, on Friday, that I come back here and be able to share more information with you. Again, if you found something helpful, click that like button down on the bottom of YouTube so that others know there's something informative and helpful for them waiting in this video. Who knows? Maybe next, if it wasn't anything helpful in this video, we'll get you next time. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again. Until then, learn something, share it with somebody else, and you will be helpful. Take care. See you next time. Bye.